Hey Ryan. Well, I thought it would be fun to talk a little bit about the Hermes Agent. It's a
Okay.
new, agent that a lot of people are exploring out there, alternatives to some of the other popular ones, Claude Code, Open Code, all those. And I wanted to show that in conjunction with a new tool or another tool that I learned about last week called Lemonade Server, which is a local inference model serving tool, very similar to LM Studio. If you've used that, in fact, that's kind of how I learned about this. Is I've been using LM Studio locally on this Windows machine, which is where we're talking to you today, and it's worked fine running local models. I can get them stood up in LM Studio just fine. I've got some GPU power here in my machine, and I've had a lot of success. But something happened here. A Windows update, I think, took place a few weeks ago, and ever since then, LM Studio doesn't let me recognize, or it just doesn't recognize my GPU anymore. So when I come in here to load up any of these models, and I can probably get one going real quick here if we just load up something sort of small, maybe here, we'll just load this up, and then once it's done, I'll start it and find out if this is still the case with the GPU problem. So we've got the model loaded here. I'm going to start LM Studio. And at this point, I should be able to like connect to it, via some of the, pretty much any of the tools that I've got available to me. But let me resize this so you can get to where I can see the GPU settings here. But you can probably see the text here where it says all GPUs are currently disabled.
Right.
Uh, that was very confusing, obviously, when I came in here to start playing with this one day. And so I checked out the GPU settings screen here, and it's telling me that there's zero GPUs detected. Well, there are in fact two GPUs in this machine, both of them AMD, and so I'm not really sure what the issue was, but obviously that caused a problem for me wanting to do any kind of local development. There's lots of other tools out there, but LM Studio is just sort of the one I've been using. Well, fast forward to you and I and another colleague of ours last week. We were out in San Francisco at a conference, and I happened to be talking about this whole project and the problems I was having with somebody at the Datadog booth. And lo and behold, somebody from AMD was actually right there. I think maybe talking to you about something. And anyway, so we kind of merged our conversations. I kind of reiterated what I was going through. He told me to swing by the AMD booth. I went over there, chatted with those folks, and then the next day, another gentleman from AMD came over, and we got to talking about it as well. And then that's when he pointed out this new tool to me called Lemonade Server. And so I thought I would do a little bit of exploring on this and just see what I could find out for y'all who might be also trying to play with stuff locally. Maybe you're also on an AMD GPU and having issues with LM Studio, but whatever the case may be, uh, Lemonade Studio here, I originally got it running on my Windows device, just downloading the Windows option here, the Windows package. But because Hermes Agent that I'm going to be using is actually running in WSL2 within Windows, which is on Ubuntu, uh, what we ended up needing to do to just sort of make things a little easier is just use this option here to install it locally into WSL. So in terms of installing Lemonade Server, whether what, basically just choose the quick start option that works best for you here. But in my case, I went with Ubuntu, copied that, and then over in any kind of terminal, you can just paste that in. Pasted the wrong thing there, but paste in. I guess I hadn't copied it, but paste in the actual sudo apt install little command there, and then once you have the server running, it's or installed, it's pretty straightforward to just get that running. And in fact, there's a few commands that I've kind of went and let me grab my notes on, because some of them I thought were pretty helpful in terms of like just keeping handy. Of course, these days you can talk to about any model and ask it like what are the commands that I'm supposed to be using. But Lemonade serve is how we got this going. And when you run this, I've already got it running, but when you run this, what it does is it opens up, it gets the server running, but it also opens up this interface that I wanted to share with you. And this interface is pretty nice because it shows you the models that you have available and what's running here on the side. These are just all the ones that are, kind of built in, available for you to download. What I've been using is down here within the Llama CPP group, all the way down here. Qwen is the model that, or the model groups that I've been mostly exploring with. In fact, this Qwen 3.5 4B is specifically the one I've been playing with, really because if you look over here, it's got a few more options that some of the other models don't. Vision is one, which in my case, I'm not really using or planning on messing with Vision, but it's nice that it's there. But it's this tool calling one that I'm actually the most interested in, because that's really the strength of Hermes, and a lot of the agents out there. So this is the model that I'm going to use. And now, so in order to get it loaded and ready to go, I would just hit play here. But what I've realized after about an hour messing around with this morning, Ryan, is that if you do that, it's just going to load in the default settings in terms of the context window, context size, all that kind of stuff. And in probably most cases, that's not going to work for you. And that's exactly what I ran into. So you just go over here to the cog, into the options. You'll see that the context size is set pretty small. So I go ahead and just, max that out, get up to 256,000 and load that in. And then once that's ready to go, now I should be able to come in here and it'll give me my, yeah, I think it's already starting to load it up in here in the active models. You can see now that I've got Qwen 3.5 4B GGUF, which GGUF, I don't remember, Ryan, you know the acronym, but that has something to do with the quantization of the models or something, right?
Yeah, I think it's GPT generated unified format. I will admit that I just Googled that, but yeah, it's basically it's designed to be faster loading essentially. So it takes less memory, is my understanding.
Oh, right on. Cool. Yeah. Well, so now that we've got this working over here, I think I can, I might have to shrink the size here to test this chat out. But let's just see if we're talking to the model now, even with a misspelling. Okay, so you can see we're getting some kind of response here, and this is Qwen 3.5. So we are talking to the model here. Let me increase that just a little bit here. And so anyway, this little interface for Lemonade is really nice, because you got the chat over here on the side, you got the logs here in the center, and then you can turn all this off if you'd like. I think every time I change the size here, it kind of make things a little difficult for me, but it's kind of nice to have all these things, available to you within an interface. I told you earlier, as I was troubleshooting that token problem, I actually found, by looking at the logs here, I spotted an error as I was trying to get Hermes to talk to Lemonade. So that was actually quite helpful in the process of troubleshooting. So anyway, we've got Lemonade running. We've got a local model running. So that's good. Now we need to go and talk about our agent.
Okay.
So Hermes Agent. Hermes Agent has been popping up in my YouTube feed for a few weeks now. We've got a few folks in engineering and even within advocacy who've been talking about it and playing with it. I'm, just now starting to dive in. I hope to do maybe some more videos that'll do a deeper dive into Hermes, but I'll show you what I've figured out so far. First of all, this is the GitHub repo where you can go download this. This is an MIT license, which I know, Ryan, you got excited about. And it's from this group called New Research, which I guess have been around a while, really involved with LLMs and models for a long time, but now they've got this really fun tool, TUI as we call it, the terminal user interface. And there's quite a few features and things that differentiate it from some of the other tools that are out there. This one you can hook up to lots of different apps like Telegram and Slack and WhatsApp, so you can talk to it from somewhere else. You set up a gateway, just the Hermes gateway. It also is intended to self-improve the skills over time. So as you work on things, and it creates skills for you, and then based on the results of that, it's constantly trying to improve those. It's got the notion of cron jobs and being able to set up some automation on a schedule, which is kind of nice. Let's say you wanted to every morning go and read through your inbox and give you a summary of anything that you think is the most important. You could set that up on a timer. It's got the notion of doing more parallelization with some sub-agents, kind of delegating out work a little bit, which I think is really neat. And in fact, there's this dashboard element now that I think is going to be very interesting to watch, kind of unfold when it comes to setting up multiple agents and the notion of nudging and kind of kicking off different things in parallel. So I'll touch on that just in a little bit. And yeah, so anyway, Hermes is kind of looking pretty promising for a lot of folks, and the install is pretty simple. So just copy that and then head over to your terminal. Before that, I'll just take a look at their website, which is kind of an interesting design, which I'll say matches exactly their dashboard design that is a tool that's built into the Hermes agent. But you can see here a few of the other things that they tried to point out. Differentiator wise is real sandboxing is one aspect that I have not really looked at too much, but I know it's a big thing for a lot of folks who are getting involved with these agents. So anyway, those are the URLs to go check out when it comes to Hermes. But if we just pop over into my terminal, I've already got Hermes running here. And in fact, I just wanted to get it kind of fired up because anybody who's run local models will know that it isn't always that fast. Even on the best hardware, it's still just not going to be as fast as using some of the frontier models and things that are available online via API. But there's lots of other benefits to running locally. So anyway, I went ahead and talked to the model locally once we had it running, just to make sure that it was answering us. Now, of course, we did see I had to reload that with a different context window here. So I'm going to actually exit this, Ryan, and just come back in, just so I know that we're talking to the Hermes. But before that, I think it might be nice to show off the setup, because the setup actually kind of indicates some of the flexibility and some of the options that you have in here. Even with just going with the quick setup, you'll see that there are a lot of options when it comes to choosing your provider. So at the very top here, the new portal, if you're using New Research, if you've got a subscription through them, they've got a ton of models that are available. Open Router is one that we've used quite a bit. I've got a subscription with them, as well as OpenAI and Anthropic. So you can come through here and really use a lot of options in terms of getting things set up. Now, when it comes to the local stuff, what you're going to end up doing is this custom endpoint here. And I think, like I said earlier, when you launch the Lemonade server from the command line, you're actually also going to be able to come in here to the address, the local host port 13305, and see that the Lemonade server is running locally. I'm going to make this just a little larger to see. And we can find this is going to be our endpoint that we'll use within Hermes Agent here when it asks us. And anyway, so just to know where to find those types of things, you can always get this out of documentation too. But what we would do is come in and do custom endpoint, and then it's going to ask us for the API base URL. That's where I would take this address right here without the curl, just this part right here all the way up to V1. That's our base URL, and you're going to bring that over. Now I'm going to bail out of here because I don't want it to mess up my already existing setup. So I'm just going to open Hermes. And like I did before, one of the things I often do just to make sure we're talking to the local model is just ask it, what model am I speaking to? That usually reaches out to the local endpoint. And if we were to move over to the Lemonade server and into the logs, we'll probably see some activity happening in here too. Just scroll all the way down here at the bottom. Sometimes on these first calls to the model, it takes quite a bit of time. It could be 20, 30 seconds. That's why often I just start with something simple. It's kind of a wake up step. But while that's running, or while we're waiting on that to run, I think the other thing I'm going to do is open up the Hermes web UI for you. So I'm going to actually just hit, see if I can end this by, if you can let me get out of here. So I'm going to say Hermes dashboard. And it'll give us the address where that's going to be available. And it actually launches it in another browser window for us. Although it's kind of a weird version of Chrome that I don't use. So I'm going to go grab the other browser and we'll refresh this. And while we're waiting on Hermes to kind of wake up over there, I'll just show you what I've figured out within this dashboard, because it's actually pretty fancy, although the style is a little maybe an interesting choice. But at the top here, we can see all the different sessions that have taken place over the past, where I've been experimenting with it. We can see the one that's actually happening right here. Not much has taken place with it yet. Here's some of the previous ones. So it's kind of nice to be able to go in and actually see the history of all the conversations and what you've been doing within Hermes. You also have the analytics over here, which I thought were interesting. That starts to break down some of the token consumption and just different things that it knows about. Of course, still kind of problems with local models waiting for things to load here. So we'll give that just another minute, and then I'll maybe pull something else up. But the one thing, Ryan, that I definitely want to show people is this notion of the Kanban board, because to me this seems very familiar to, or reminds me, at least, that the notion of nudging and all these little different tasks and stuff reminds me of some of the stuff that you've talked about with Gastown and OpenClaw and some of those tools. And I don't know, like, that's just not an area that I've really explored too much in, but it feels like this is kind of unlocking that for some of the users of Hermes as well. Back into the analytics here, we can see the token usage and daily and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's I think kind of a nice feature that's just out of the box, ready for you. Now let's get back over into Hermes. Okay, so we did finally get a response back that they were talking to our Qwen local model. And from here, it's just a matter of like exploring the different skills. We could go into the skills if we wanted to, which if I just pull this dashboard up, you can also find the skills over here too. So if we wanted, we could just look through what are all the different available skills to us here. And this is a little small, but it's got Airtable and a lot of weird things, ASCII video. There's a Claude Code and Claude Design one, Codex. So a lot of out-of-the-box skills, and then it looks like you can also add your own plugins pretty easily by just providing the repo and that kind of thing there. So anyway, Ryan, I think I need to go into Hermes and actually spend some time building some stuff, and maybe not necessarily locally because it's just kind of a little too slow, but really wrap my arms around Hermes in a little bit better way, and then do a future video on what Hermes can actually do, because it seems pretty promising. But unfortunately, running local models and all that kind of stuff, even though I got it working, it's just not a real great experience and not very efficient for me. So those are really the highlights I wanted to show off, is that you can get all this working through Lemonade very easily on a Windows machine in WSL, even if you've got problems with potentially some of your hardware. So yeah, it's kind of a neat little experiment.
That looks really cool. Listen, I won't talk too much, but I thought in particular on the Kanban side, it had the I guess the concept of lanes and profiles assigning to lanes. So imagine like you could have a lane or I could have a lane, and maybe we're virtual profiles, which I don't think I've seen in a lot of the things that we've looked at before. For example, in AutoCloud, it's missing that paradigm, unfortunately. The other thing in there that I thought was pretty interesting is you've got things like there's a Philips Hue skill, and I haven't tried that yet, but this sounds kind of interesting to me, because combined with a schedule and maybe a model that doesn't have the intelligence of something like an Opus or a Chat GPT X High, for example, but if it's just that it's a certain time of day, or we know the sun has risen, which changes every day, like what does that look like? I think that schedule plus smaller reasoning might actually be pretty interesting. This is cool. I'll definitely look into it. And you're right, the MIT BSD Apache compatible licenses, for me at least, mean that you can kind of get in there and get your hands dirty, which is sweet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there's still a lot. It feels, within the skills, as I sort of looked through there was a lot that caught my attention as something to use on the personal side more than on the business and like
Right.
software development side. There's some home automation things in there, like you pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
There's some tools in there around using Obsidian and I think Notion also, which are two
Right.
note-taking tools that I use heavily. So I'm very curious about how I can, go in and experiment with some of that stuff. But I think I'm going to have to move it online rather than doing the inference locally. It's just a little too slow for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think you had mentioned something like was it Karpati's second brain or personal
Yeah.
wiki, something like that. Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing how that I can kind of get that working now. It's working great for me using Obsidian and that whole wiki model
Hmm.
and Claude Code. It's how I do things kind of for my work notes. But
Gotcha.
for my personal side, I think I want to experiment with Hermes and doing, just some other, I use a lot of other tools that are just kind of outside of the Datadog ecosystem.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to try this out. As mentioned before, we're kind of moving away from, let's say, OpenClaw or the other claw sort of systems and kind of
Hmm.
making different agents now, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. That was awesome. Have a great day, Jason.
Bye.